Welcome to this YouTube version of this week's Highland League Weekly panel, taken from the main press and journal Highland League Weekly show over on our website. To watch the full show, which includes highlights this week of both title challengers meeting each other, Brora Rangers against Brechin City from Dudgeon Park, you need to be a subscriber to the press and journal website. The good news is for you can subscribe via our sports pack at the moment for just £1 for your first 3 months, and that'll get you access to every episode of Highland League Weekly. But if you would just like to chat about the weekend's results, 9 games taking place in the Brechin Highland League, you're in the right place. We're starting with that game. Myself and Paul Third will be discussing a game that ended 2-0 to the visitors, Brechin City, against their title rivals, Brora. Big result list for Brechin, more than a touch of fortune for Ewan Loudon's first goal. I think he didn't know too much about it. The ball was maybe kicked off him and deflected into the net, but second was a great run and finish. Kind of felt, Paul, like Brora didn't get going until they were 2 down in this one.
Yeah, all of that's fair comment. Starting with Brechin, first of all, I think when you follow on from an injury time winner last weekend, when there's potentially a foul on the goalkeeper, and then the most fortuitous of openers at Dudgeon Park, it does make you wonder if some things are perhaps meant to be, yes. But yeah, to follow that up with a quality second goal from the break to the finish, and actually the goalkeeper, you feel a little bit sorry for him, because if he keeps that out, it's a terrific save. But that's why the very brush of his fingertips wasn't quite enough. Yeah, but yeah, Loudon's so important for Brechin. And they're back in the driving seat for me. For Brora, it's a frustrating afternoon for them. And such a big game, you're expecting a response after losing 3-2 at Bucky the week before, and they're 2-0 down for 2 goals in 2 minutes and really up against it. And honestly, they didn't really look like getting back into it for me.
Yeah, I mean, they did have chances. I mean, there was a great save from Lenny Wilson that Ewan Spark, I think, then clears the second bite off the line. And then, obviously, Tony Dingwall hit the post for Brora in the second half. One thing we'll need to discuss, a couple of penalty shouts in the game. The big one for me could have went Brora's way in the second half. Cross comes in, and the arm's kind of like behind the player, the Brechin defender. And I think what he's trying to do, as that cross is hit, he's already run past the line of the ball, and he's kind of trying to, like, in any way possible, get his body back in the way of the cross. Now, ideally, that's his head or his body, but I think instinctively he puts the hand out behind him, and it hits the arm. Yeah. And for me, it's not a natural running motion. He has moved his arm into the path of the ball. For me, that should be a penalty. Now, Callum tells us, having spoken to referee Harry Bruce, that he didn't see it, and he went off potentially the linesman. And what his take was, I think the linesman should see that. I think it should be a penalty kick. And that would have obviously been a massive potential turning point, the momentum of the game.
No complaint from me with any of that assessment. I think it is a stonewaller, and I don't know quite how the referee says he's unsighted, so we hear the assistant. I don't know how you're looking along the line and you don't see that, but a tough break. I also think the first one, when it was 0-0, I think it was, is a penalty as well. Michael Finnis blocking Ewan Spark's acrobatic effort. I know they're close together. I know you could make an argument he can't get out the way, but he basically puts his arms out and makes the letter T. And by doing that, and then the ball hitting his arm, he's blocking a shot that is on target, heading in. If not into the back of the net, it's going to force the goalkeeper to have to do something, or it's 1-0. So I think, for me, I would have given both.
Yeah, so maybe it was evened up, but obviously Brora, it's for Brechin, they don't mind too much because they then went 2-0 up, but for Brora, it's a heavy blow. Steve Mackay after the game, I was somewhat surprised to hear him kind of admit that it was a huge game to lose, and it could be a potentially huge, moment in the title race. Brechin now top of the table, 3 points clear.
Yeah.
I mean, how big is it?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I sat here when Patrick Craig had been dismissed, and I was like, that's a risky move, a gamble, and maybe a panic move. Eggs on my face at this point, because I took a note here, it was 4 draws and 5. Brechin had suffered at that point when they made the change. Ray McKinnon's come in, 3 wins out of 3, 3 points clear at the top of the table, back to being the Brechin that we perhaps expect to see, of that they can nick a goal and they're so hard to break down defensively. Brora, just as this has happened, Brora have now suffered back-to-back defeats for the first time all season. They're up against it, and I was just looking at the fixtures that are coming up. It's really tough. Brora's next 3 are all on the road, and then by the time they finally get back home at the end of the month, it's Banks of D coming up. Brechin, by contrast, they've got a tough one at Locos in midweek, but then it's home to Forest on Saturday, away to Strathspey, and then a tough one of their own at Formartins. So they've both still got tough tests ahead, but you've got to say it's advantage Brechin at this point.
Okay, a great result there for a young Turriff side, and showed plenty of character for me. I mean, summed up by going on to find a winner, having let Josh Meekins in to net that late Clark equaliser. I think the equaliser itself, when you watch it, you kind of see how young the Turriff team are, because the Clark players, big physical men, I would dare say that, they are queuing up to head that one in. Josh Meekins just happens to be the one. But Keane Yates gets the winner. Apologies for those who want to see Rhys McEwen's opening goal. Bit of a camera didn't quite pan fast enough, but I'm sure it was a great finish, Rhys. But yeah, Turriff, great character. If you're Clark, though, probably the opposite feeling, because you get your equaliser late on, and then you lose the game. Yeah,
I mean, it's funny because I think Turriff had 12 players missing on Saturday. So yes, it was a very youthful team, including a 17-year-old goalkeeper. That's a terrific result for Warren Cummins' side. They obviously would have felt hard done by being on the receiving end of that Brechin defeat last weekend. So it's a great response. Yeah, for the reasons you said, they've got all these guys out. They've taken the lead. They've been pegged back, and you're thinking, oh, it's not to be. But yeah, to keep going and nick it, it's very opportunistic finishing from Yates at the back post, because I think everyone at Clark goes the front and then they miss it and he's in. From a Clark point of view, it'll be disappointing for Conor Gethins. I mean, his team have scored 10 goals in the last 2 matches. They're arriving at the Hawks thinking, we've got a chance here. Then they see the team sheet and I think we've got a really good chance here. So yeah, they'll be hugely frustrated at heading back up the road with nothing to show. And it was funny. I see that Connor in his post-match comments had said Turriff were celebrating like they'd done something. Yeah, but they'd done something with 12 guys out. That's why they were celebrating. And I suppose it's a measure of respect for how well the Lillywhites have done this season.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Clark, now their top 5 prospects are harmed by that result. When you look at the table now, I think it's in Fraserborough's hands, below them, I believe. It is Fraserburgh, isn't it? I mean, so the gap at the moment as it stands, Fraserburgh in 6th, Clark in 5th. It's a 5-point gap, but Fraserburgh crucially have the 3 games in hand. So if Clark had won at the weekend, they'd still been the 8 points. It would still be a great season, though, for Clark, wouldn't it? If they finished 6th.
It's been a fantastic season for Clark. Whatever happens at this point, but they'll want to finish. They've got 4 games left. They'll want to finish strong, whatever happens. What other teams do is out of their control.
Okay. Well, let's move on then. As I said earlier, 7 other games in the Brechin Highland League on Saturday in a full card. We'll start with Rothes 1, Banks of D 5 in this section. So another game for me, looking at this one straight away, where Rothes, we know they're under threat, we know they're bottom of the table. They've pushed a good side again, 65 minutes, they're leading.
And then the roof caves in.
And then the roof caves in. Sean Morrison had headed them in front in 33 minutes. Sean McCarthy had made quite a few decent saves by the sounds of things. Ian Vigers finally got D's equaliser on 65 minutes. Then Hamish McLeod, Olin Alexander OG, Liam Jewell, and Hamish McLeod again sort of saw D streak away with it. I thought afterwards, Ronnie Sharp, his post-match was quite interesting as well, saying that he just can't get the players, or they just can't get the players fit enough. Every game's the same, really good for 60, 65 minutes, and then they run out of steam. But then that's the responsibility of the players themselves. You've got to keep yourself fit. You can't get away with training 2 nights a week in this league. The players need to work by themselves to increase their levels of fitness. I mean, it's something in 2025 you would be expecting players to do. I'm sure it's something the Banks of D players, or I know it's something the Banks of D players do, for example. So if that's the difference, that's something that the Rothes players should be looking to rectify.
I think so. And if I'm a Rothes player, it's the ultimate criticism from your manager to have your your approach to playing for the club being questioned. And I think that's, for me, it's the strongest possible way of saying, you guys need to have a look here and see, am I doing enough? Could I be doing more?
It's paid football.
Yeah, you're being paid to do a job. He's clearly feeling that you guys are not giving me everything you've got, or you need to find a way of getting more. And that's a damning indictment. Let's be honest, it is. It's to have your professionalism questioned. I think it's tough, really tough as a player, and you react one way or the other. You either do something about it, which is going to be hard as we're coming towards the end of the season, but you're certainly looking, going, I need to be doing more. I need to come back in pre-season showing I'm fitter, I'm sharper, I'm ready for this, or else you're not going to be there. I think that's what Ronnie's saying.
Especially the predicament the club potentially in, it's very precarious. Okay, Fraserburgh 2, Nairn County 0. Now this game sounded like one where both teams had chances, but the team that took their chances ultimately won. Scott Barber scored in 37 minutes after a couple of close calls and what sounded like a strong first half from Fraserburgh. Nairn, after the interval, good few chances. Ben Barron goal chalked off for offside, but other near misses. Fraser Mackey extended Fraserburgh's lead in 70 minutes. But over the piece, I'm reading that Nairn hit the crossbar twice, denied on the line or from close range a good few times. But ultimately, a good week for Fraserburgh after their Shield success.
Yeah, I mean, they were well worth their Shield victory in midweek against Formartine, but there is always that, I suppose, that is there a little hangover coming after a big cup final win. Yeah, and Mark Howie will be delighted to go and follow that up by taking 3 points and keeping a clean sheet. Yeah, they've had a difficult afternoon of it by the sounds of things, and Nairn will be frustrated at going up to Fraserburgh and creating as many chances as they do, but that's the lesson. When you're playing one of those teams that would be a top 8 side, higher than that if it's Fraserburgh of recent years, you've got to take your chances.
Yep. Okay, Forest Mechanics 1, Buckie Thistle 1. Matt Jameson gave Forest a first half lead in this one with a superb long range strike. Hopefully we're able to bring you that one. But Finn Allen's 6th goal in 7 games. We've spoken about Finn Allen on loan from Elgin City. It meant it ended all square, and Buckie's unbeaten run continues.
They're going well. I mean, weirdly, it's been such a weird season for Buckie Thistle. I've said it a few times. A campaign of transition for Lewis McKinnon in his squad, and there will be more changes in the summer. I'm sure of that. But they're ending strongly. Callum's touched on it in previous weeks. There's been a change of formation. Finn Allen's come in and done brilliantly. Whether they can keep him, I don't know. He's a loan signing at the minute from Elgin City, but certainly I'm sure Lewis will be looking at this striker thinking he can do a job for me next season. But that's the big question I would be asking about the Jags. For Forest, they've been going reasonably well too. I think they're in good shape. I've liked Jordan Alonge every time I've seen him. I threw out a mention a few weeks ago as a Huntly player being a potential Player of the Year candidate. I think Alonge's done fantastic since he's went in the Can-Cans. That's another one I'd throw in the mix.
Okay, Huntly, on that subject, 7, Keith 0 on Saturday. In fairness to Keith, although they suffered their biggest loss to their derby rivals since the 1949-1950 season, we're told there were mitigating circumstances. At 1-0, Keith's Ryan Robertson was shown a straight red card for a tackle that was described as rash. Craig Reid, the friend of the show, friend of Highland League goalkeeper for Keith, he was also injured at 2-0, hurt shoulder diving for the ball, I believe, meaning it was more than a half of action for Keith with an outfield player in goal. Ultimately, that led to Huntly racking up quite a scoreline. Brody Allen, I think, got a brace in the game. As Craig Ewan was quite
it's always entertaining.
Just one of those days to forget.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, Keith have had games where they've lost this season, obviously, but this is one of them where you can point to a couple of factors and go well, that contributed.
Yeah, I think everyone associated with the Maroons are questioning each other, going, has somebody walked under a ladder on the way here today? It's a sore afternoon where everything that could go wrong has gone wrong, but you just have to write it off and go, you know what? It wasn't meant to be today, boys. Let's just regroup. For Huntly, That's 12 goals in 2 games.
Yeah.
We're talking again about Clark a few minutes ago, finishing the season strongly. That's what they're looking to do. They've got some really tough games coming up against the sides who I would regard as their rivals up the top of half of the table. It'll be interesting to see if they can keep this going to the end.
I was actually, I don't want to be unduly harsh here, but I was actually looking at Huntly in the table there just to see how many goals they had scored this season. 63. I was maybe expecting more based on, like, I think there's been a few games who've been like, oh, Huntly, you know, fairly put them away, loads of attacking threat, but yeah, 63 goals in 26. They're ninth in the table, obviously, and, you know, the teams that have scored more than them are, you know, the likes of Clark and Locos and, you know.
But they've got a few games to play, to be fair. Let's see what the final tally is. I think they'll be up there.
Okay. Still could be the entertainers, Huntly. Wick Academy 4, Lossy Mouth 1. Good win this for Wick. They've been kind of finishing the season strongly.
We're sounding like we're repeating ourselves here, are we?
Kyle Henderson, hat-trick in this one. On the subject of repeating ourselves, he's been somebody that's come up a good few times in recent weeks. He's been impressive. Since joining Wick, George Ewan also was the player that scored Wick's second of their 4, and he's someone that I know we've mentioned previously too. It was a good farewell match for James Moore, the Wick goalie at 36. He's still going to be the goalkeeping coach, but he's stepping away from playing. He thinks it's time to do that. Lossy with a late consolation from Owen Loveland from 25 yards, but they were already down to 10 men at that stage. Ollie Hodgson dismissed for a second. Yellow bit, yeah, great win for Wick Academy.
Oh, terrific. And yeah, they're finishing the season strongly, I'll have to say it again.
Yeah.
And they're so good at home. That's what historically we've expected from a Wick team. It's maybe not been quite that, maybe the last couple of years, but they're getting back to that. It seems to be. For Lossy, I think it's a big summer ahead there as well. I mean, the league table doesn't lie. They're the lowest scorers, and they're shipping goals more than they perhaps normally do, and that's a lethal combination if you're looking to be a team competing further up the table.
Great. Inverurie Locos 5, Strathspey Thistle 0. Now, Dean Donaldson, the Locos manager, he was chuffed after this one, was able to make a few changes after the break because things were pretty comfortable for his side, and I think when Locos have tried to do that previously, it's maybe not worked as well this season. But yeah, Josh Bolton had them ahead on 4 minutes. Lloyd Robertson made it 2 in 25 minutes. Further goals in that opening period from Daniel Agnew and Bolton again. Cole Anderson scored the goal of the game, we're told, with an amazing finish in the second period. Solid for Locos. They continue to, you know, plough on.
Yeah, I mean,
trains don't really plough, do they? They continue to steam on at the top of the table. But for Strathspey, I mean, with the improvements they're trying to make under Ryan Essen, like, you know, Locos seems like they want a canter there.
Yeah, we wouldn't have Highland League Weekly without a Ryan Cryle pun, would we? Yeah, I mean, Locos are going well. They'll be looking at Banks of D thinking, we're 3 behind. We can catch them. If we're sitting saying Brechin can be caught by Brora, then I don't see why D can't be caught by Locos. It's interesting, that top 4. Strathspey, yeah, the only solace for them, I suppose, is the fact that the result elsewhere was equally damaging for their rival near the bottom of the table. You just have to try and lick your wounds and move on from that and see what you can learn from it. Not chipping early goals is clearly the most important lesson for Ryan Essen's side.
I mean, even not to be overly sort of positive about Locos and negative about Brora, but like, you know, like if Locos keep winning, you're kind of like, there's no telling where they could end up this season and win the rest of their games. You know, the points gap is now 5 points. I know there's a game in hand there as well, but we'll see. Exciting, as you said. One more game to discuss from Saturday. Devonvale 1 for Martin United 2. Julian Wade grabbed a controversial opener in this one after 43 minutes. Vale were unhappy though with Filippo Mazzoni, the referee. Tobias Davies-Brown was down with a head knock, we believe, but play continued and the goal was scored. Things were then compounded 90 seconds later when Glenn Murison scored for Martin's second. Sounded like for Martin had further chances, but 30 minutes remaining after for Martin had just hit the post. Cammy Angus netted for Devonvale to make an interesting finish, but yeah, for Martin get a win.
Yeah, and they needed it, I suppose, after the disappointment, the cup final defeat. So, and Devonvale have caused a few teams problems this season. They're competitive in most weeks when they're in action. So I think that's a good result for Martin. Devon Vale, they'll be pointing to that first goal and querying justifiably if that's accurate that it was a head knock, because I always assumed that was the rule. If it's head, the whistle goes. So I can understand why they might be a bit miffed at this one.
Yeah, maybe refs just not noticed it or whatever. There's no excuse. Let's have a look then at the Brechin Highland League standings following the 9 games on Saturday. That's it then, all of the results from Saturday's Brechin Highland League action discussed. Just a reminder, if you'd like to watch highlights from the weekend, our 2 highlights games, of course, include that showdown between the title rivals Brora Rangers and Brechin City from Dudgeon Park. You need to be a subscriber to the Press & Journal website. The good news is you can watch that full show right now by becoming a subscriber for just the low price of £1 for your first 3 months of access, which I think is quite a good deal. But if you'd prefer to keep just watching these YouTube results discussions, you can do that as well. We'll be back next week with one of those. In the meantime, please keep up to date with everything Highland League and Highland League Weekly from the Press & Journal via 2 methods. You can follow us on our various social media pages, including our Highland League Weekly ones. You can also sign up to our Highland League newsletter. There's a link to do that below this video. But until we see you next, please enjoy the football, whichever games you're watching.